wonder why pilots that make $30 an hour only make $30,000 a year? Well, I'm going to explain that in this video. And this video is for those that are new to aviation. And also, this is a video that you can share with your friends and family about how pilots are paid. And I'm going to concentrate on the fact that airline pilots are primarily paid by the hour. And we can explain why somebody who makes $30 an hour only makes $30,000 a year. Because most people would think that person makes $60,000 a year, just based on that rule of 2,000. Pilots are paid only based on 1,000 hours per year. That sums it up, but let's dive deep into this. My name is Carl Valerian. I'm the host of Aviation Careers Podcast, and hopefully this information will be helpful to you if you're new, or if you're somebody who's a friend or family member, this will help you out also. So what I'm going to do, just for those that come to me usually for technical advice, etc., I'm going to try to make this a little bit more general to help your family and friends out. So first of all, let's concentrate on one group of people where most of the pilots are, and that's going to be airline pilots. I'll talk about corporate pilots a little bit later because they're traditionally paid similarly to a lot of the people that work in the normal jobs out there. And then I'll talk a little bit about flight instructors so that your family can understand why you're getting paid a certain amount of money as a flight instructor. So let's go back to what I was just saying. Pilots are paid by the hour. Pilots are paid by the hour. So going back to my example, a pilot making $30 an hour is going to be making $30,000 a year because most pilots are paid 1,000 hours per year. And remember this, you'll hear this often on the news, etc. People will say we're only paid when we're flying the airplane. To be a little more specific, most airlines will pay you from the time all the doors are closed and we release the brake to push back from the gate to the time we come back to the gate and then open the doors again. So that's actually where we get paid, from brake release to actually at the gate and opening the doors. There are some nuances in that. I'm not going to get into that because it's a generalization, and hopefully that makes sense to you. So in saying that, think about this. A pilot shows up to the airplane at least 1 hour prior to the flight, is doing all their planning. We're boarding the flight. If we're delayed a few hours, we're not getting paid, quote unquote, for that time, or that's the perception, right? But understand that there's some other things involved in getting paid by the hour. If we strictly got paid by the hour and say we show up to work to fly 8 hours and the flight doesn't go, then we're going to lose 8 hours of pay. It doesn't work that way. And that's because of the rules that are set by the airline and also by the unions. And those are what they call work rules. So in those work rules, what they define, and you're going to hear your spouse or friend talking about what's called trip rigs and duty rigs and that type of thing. Well, basically what it says is this. If you're going to show up to work, there's a minimum amount we're going to give you for every time that you show up to work. A lot of times it's say 5 hours per day, it might be 6 hours per day. And what that means is this: if they bring you into work and they have you do a flight, really short flight that's only 1 hour, they still have to give you a minimum pay of say 5 hours, right? 5 hours. And that's actually interesting because that takes into account, there's a thing called duty rigs and trip rigs. Trip rigs is telling you that during a trip, you're going to get a minimum amount of pay per hour that you're at work. And that's a little more convoluted. I don't want to get into that too much, but let's say your duty rig, which is a lot easier to understand. That means when you come onto duty, when you start your job, you're going to get paid. It's usually for every 2 hours you work, you're going to get a minimum of 1 hour of pay for that 2 hours that you're at work. So let's go back to my example that I said about canceling the flight. Say they don't cancel your flight and you're on duty and you're supposed to work for 8 hours, right? And get paid for 8 hours. But you wind up being on duty for 24 hours. By the way, that's illegal, but this is just an example. Say you're on duty for 24 hours because we have rest rules, by the way. The FAA sets rest rules. Most duty rigs, they're called duty rigs, will have you get paid for 1 hour for every 2 hours you're there. So in that case, you're going to get at least 12 hours of pay. So say you show up for 8 hours of work, but you're there for 24 hours, and then they let you go home and clock you off. Or you wind up flying and landing 24 hours later. Well, then you would get paid 12 hours under that 2-to-1 duty rig rule. It's kind of interesting, though, that we as pilots also kind of assimilate to the salaries of people too. So we also look at the whole month, not just the duty or the day. We look at a minimum monthly pay guarantee. And you're going to hear pilots talk about a guarantee. And what does that mean? That means that, say that I'm only working 2 days that month, and that's what their schedule has been set up for. Well, you're really going to get paid for at least a certain number of hours. Let's use 75 hours, which is fairly common. So even if you only fly 2 hours that month, you're still going to get paid 75 hours. What's a good example of that? For instance, airlines have what they call reserve pilots, or pilots on call. You see people, firemen, doctors, they're on call, and that's similar to this. So you're going to get at least a minimum amount of pay, even if all you do is come in and do one flight that's like 3 hours. You're still going to get that 75 hours of pay, because it's very important to have those pilots that are on call, because they actually help with the integrity of the schedule. So for instance, why would they use somebody who's on call? Well, say a pilot calls in sick the last moment, or say somebody gets in a car accident, a flat tire or whatever, they'll call up a reserve pilot to have them come in and do that trip. So that's where that whole minimum pay guarantee comes in. So the other thing we get is what's called vacation pay, and that's again based on hourly. So for instance, say we go back to, the fact that we get, say, 70 hours a month of pay, we'll say, and our pay is, say, for vacation, we get 35 hours of vacation per month, and we get that for, say, 2 months. We get 2 months vacation. Well, one of those months that I'm off, I get 35 hours of pay, but I also have to work 35 hours. So that in that case, you're going to get up to that 70 hours, right, of pay. So even on a vacation month, which is really cool, since we're paid by the day and by the hour, we can move our schedules around and enable ourselves to have a great schedule for a vacation month like I do. I wind up only working 1 week and having 3 weeks off on a vacation month. And sometimes I may only work like 2 or 3 days, depending on how I am able to change my schedule. So understand that pilots at airlines are paid by the hour, and it's by the flight hour, and we're only paid from the time we close the door till the time we open that door. But there's other rules that are in place, as I've explained, that allow us to make more pay, either because of a duty rig, a minimum pay per every time we come into work for the day, or a trip rig. Say the trip is 3 days long. That whole trip is paid a minimum amount of pay. So I'm trying to be as general as possible here. And there's a lot of nuances there. And by the way, the people that really make money are the ones that understand the contract. So why do some people make more money than others, like pilots? Like, say a pilot making $100 an hour, which, by the way, is about what you'll make at a regional, somewhere between $50 to $100 per hour starting pay, and I'm not talking bonuses. So why do some people that are making $100 an hour make $200 a year, or $200,000, dollars per year, and others just make $100,000 in that year? Well, that means that those people are getting that minimum pay of 1,000 hours per year. It's about 83 hours per month. So that is where we actually have people that really understand their contract are able to get paid more, and that's through some really interesting gyrations. And I have a video on that. I did a video. I really didn't want to do this one, but it's how to make $1 million as an airline pilot. I know people that do it. It can be done. It's not that hard to do. It's just a lot of work. And I'll have a link to that video as far as how you can make $1 million a year as an airline pilot. It's simple, but not easy. And also, you must know your contract. So hopefully that's given you some guidance around how much we get paid as pilots at airlines. We're going to get a little bit more into some of the other jobs out there, corporate pilots, as opposed to airline pilots. Most corporate pilots are working for a private individual or a business, right? And we call them corporate because usually the airplane a lot of times is inside a corporation, even if it's for a private individual. So those pilots are actually being paid normally a salary, and they're in an agreement with their company that says, I'm going to work a certain number of hours per day, or I'm going to work a certain number of days per week, or you're on call at all times, or we're going to come out with a schedule a week prior and this is what you're going to fly, but we still can call you in. So it's a little more fluid and not quite as defined, but some of those quote unquote corporate jobs out there act like airline jobs and have incredible work rules. What's a good example of that? You may hear your friends working for companies like NetJets and FlexJet, and even some of the people in the corporate world call that the airlines because they have such defined rules, and it's so different than the person who's just working by the hour. And that's something that is interesting too, is that in the corporate world, if you're working as a contractor, and by the way, I don't talk about contractors at the airlines because 99% of them don't allow contractors to fly. And I do understand there's certain flights that they do pay contractors, but it's very rare. Maybe it's a maintenance flight or moving an airplane, that kind of thing. But going back to the corporate flying, that is actually easy to become what's called a contract pilot. And what is a contract pilot? That's somebody who's paid by the hour, normally paid by the day. They have a day rate. So say you're paid $1,500 a day to be a captain on, say, I don't know, a Falcon, say a Falcon 50, say $1,500 a day. If you are called into work, you get that $1,500 per day. If you're not called into work, it's just like working by the hour. You're not going to get paid. But those are the people that have decided to usually work for themselves, or they might be working for a company, and that's their contract, especially for some of the low-time corporate pilots, because they need to work their way up so they can become a captain. A lot of times, the insurance, regulates how many hours they need to have as a pilot at a corporation. It could be 3,000 hours, where the airlines can hire at 1,500 hours. So again, going back to the differences, you work more like a corporate job, kind of like most people that are watching this video. If you're showing this to your friends and family, have like a salary, and you're expected to work to say 9 to 5 every day, whereas with a corporate pilot, it's kind of hard to do that. So you're expected to show up on certain days. Certain corporations have an amazing I guess you should say work rules or a work environment. Other corporations can be very difficult. It could be the best or the worst job in the world, as they say, and it's all based on who you're working for. And there's some debate as to what's better, to work for a corporation in a flight department or to work for an individual. And that's something we can get into another video. So what's the third person that we look at when we're talking about jobs? Well, the third person we talk about is the flight instructor. And many of you that are listening to this are flight instructors or have friends that are getting started. Maybe your spouse is thinking of becoming a pilot. Understand that flight instructors normally only get paid by the hour, and by the hour meaning only the hours they work. And there's no guarantees usually. There's some exceptions to that. So what does that mean? That means that normally, if you're looking at your pay, and just in general in aviation, if you're looking at your hourly rate, just remember you're going to have to work twice as many hours than you think you would. So a good example. So if you're going to work 10 hours, you're usually going to get 5 hours of pay. Now, why is that? Because usually, say as a flight instructor, you have things to do before the flight, things to do after the flight. They may include briefings, which you might or may not get paid for. It might be actually moving an airplane in between. It also takes into account that you may have a 2-hour block, 2 hours off, and another 2-hour block of flying. So normally, when you look at your hourly rate, you're looking at, you're going to have to work, if you want to make, I don't know, if you want to make 5 hours of pay, you're going to probably be at work for about 10 hours, just because of those anomalies in your schedule as a flight instructor. That's incredibly conservative, but it's very true for those schools, especially if they're not that busy. For those schools that are really busy, and this is something that I did, is I always put people on standby, so I knew I had a stream of students coming in. So those that really work smart will be able to actually put in their schedule some standby students so that they can actually have someone pop into their schedule if another person cancels. So you're at work for 10 hours, you may only get 5 hours of pay. Hopefully I explained that properly. Also, flight instructors, here's the other downside. It rains. It rains in Florida once a day, usually in the summer. In the wintertime, in the morning, we get fog. So you may not be working and may not be doing a lesson. So you're going to lose that income. Some schools have done something similar to what the airlines have, and they've gone towards more of a salary type or guaranteed income. And those are some really cool jobs that are out there. Normally, you'll probably have to sign a contract, or your spouse or your friend is going to have to sign a contract that says, okay, you're going to have to stay with us for a certain number of days, months, years, etc. And those can be great jobs because a lot of times they have benefits and you're guaranteed a certain amount of pay. And I'll tell you why those are good is because in the beginning, and hang in there if you have a spouse or a friend that's a flight instructor or a significant other. In the beginning, you make nothing. You walk in the door, you don't have any students. It's kind of like commission, right? Or even, going out and working on any kind of a job, like in carpentry or whatever. You're only getting paid for the hours you're there. So hang in there. In the beginning, it's so tough, but if you really build your student base, soon you'll be really working and making a lot of money, or making some money, I should say. A good example is usually it takes about 6 weeks to get to your schedule that actually makes a decent amount of pay. So those are the three types: the airlines, the corporate jobs, and the flight instructors. Just remember, most pilots are only paid while they're flying, quote unquote. We do get some minimum pay that I've explained a little bit here. Didn't get into too much of a deep dive as far as the trip rigs and the duty rigs and that type of thing, vacation pay, etc. But here's what's really cool. You can really have a great lifestyle as a pilot. And I actually did an episode about that, and I'll put a link down below. How to have an amazing lifestyle as an airline pilot. That's something that I'm able to do. A lot of people want to use my example, but remember this: a lot of times you can have an amazing lifestyle, you might give up some pay. So that is why a lot of people will actually go to the other route and try to make as much money as they can. And manipulating the schedule, understanding the work rules is really, really important. But most importantly, a lot of people get into this job as a pilot because of the lifestyle, because of the fact that when you actually are off, you're off. When you shut down the airplane and walk away, you're done. If you're actually somebody who is liking to get into that management role, you can do that. You can become a chief pilot. You can work in a corporate department where you actually manage that airplane. But in the beginning, it's very tough for most people because they're only getting paid by the hour. And that's why I think it's important for people to actually look at their options as far as getting different ratings. Say you have a friend or a spouse that's just has their instructor rating and is missing out on all the instrument students that are out there. Well, they can get their instrument instructor license. And the best way to do that is try to get it for free. And there's lots of scholarships out there that you can get. And as a matter of fact, the sponsor of this podcast, Stratus Financial, they actually are giving away some free scholarships guides that we have. And that's the guide we have that has over $120 million in scholarships, over 1,500 pages. And you can get one for free by going to aviationcareerspodcast.com/free and using that coupon code STRATUS. But the most important thing you do for me, if you're watching this and you're new to aviation, remember, pilots are paid by the hour. If you're a captain in a major airline, you're making $300 an hour. You're probably making about $300,000 a year. So if you're looking to see what your spouse and what your friend might be making per year, there's some great websites out there. Have that in the resources, aviationcareerspodcast.com/resources. You can link to those and see, in some of these guides, they'll say, hey, the person's making $350 a year. They have all these calculators out there, but just use that rule of thumb. You'll be making about 1,000 hours per year in pay. You can manipulate your schedule, though, to make even better pay. And to make better pay as an airline pilot, you can do double time, triple time even, work on during your vacations, those type of things. And that's what I get into in that other video about how you can make $1 million a year as an airline pilot. Well, hopefully this has been helpful to you if you're new to aviation, or if you've shared this with your friends and family. If you're friends and family, please send me an email, feedback@aviationcareerspodcast.com, if you want to know more or understand more about this whole role of being paid and paid as a pilot. Yes, it's true when you hear and you're sitting on an airliner that we only get paid while we're flying the airplane. That is, for the most part, true. That's the only portion of the flight that you actually get paid for. But there's other things that are involved, and there's other ways, especially if you have a spouse or a significant other that's thinking about this or a friend that's thinking about this as a job. Take into consideration that there are other ways that we get paid, and that's due to some of those work rules that are out there. And most importantly, though, is that when you're going through this process and say you need help, I really suggest that maybe you find a mentor. We have that group mentorship program out there. And by the way, we just started doing this really cool thing where we have a community within there where we share ideas and we share, our resumes. We share our LinkedIn profiles. We ask questions, but it's only within that group. And the reason we did that, and it's offline, is because it contains them in a safer space than the general population. look at my videos. I'm sure I'm going to get some really nasty comments on this video or get some negative feedback. It's what happens when you go out to the general public. But this is great because it keeps you in a community of people, like-minded people that want to help each other. And I think that's what's really cool. Check that out, aviationcareerspodcast.com/coaching. Also, our mentorship program, which gives you access to that community. But if you're somebody who's thinking about a career in aviation, if you're somebody who knows a person that's interested in a career in aviation, know this: the most important thing you can do in whatever you're doing in life, if you want to move forward, is take small steps every day to move forward in your career or in your life, whatever it is you want to do, whether it's losing weight, getting in better shape, or it's progressing in your career. Take small steps. Maybe watch a video, read a book, maybe go out and talk to friends about your aviation career. But do me this favor. Take one step today to move forward in your career and in your life. And I know you will reach your goal faster than you think. Thanks for watching. You'll talk to you next episode. Take care now.